Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have a good handful of people who have joined, and I appreciate that. So for the sake of your time, we'll just jump right in. My name is Brenda Graham, and I am the Data Resource Specialist for the Office of Public Instruction. And I am fairly new to OPI. I've been with OPI probably since January, 1st of January. So as I learn my job and learn who all you are, I've really had a good time. So can you all still hear me and see my screen? And you can just, yes, okay, thank you. It almost looked like it had gone away. So today we're going to talk about the collection, the end of year attendance totals, program participation. With that, we'll talk about mode of instruction, how to end some records on mode of instruction, and then we're going to talk about extracurricular activities. We'll start with the actual where to find all your resources. As you can see, I have the web page up, the Office of Public Instruction homepage. You can go to, we are going to be working on 4 guides: the end of year attendance, program participation, extracurricular, and mode of instruction. So you all may already know this, but for the sake of the webinar today, I'll show you how to get to them. So you go to Leadership tab, under Data and Reporting, you go to the AIM Achievement in Montana tab. And if you scroll down, you'll see the User Guides tab right down here. If we click on that, you can see that they're actually organized by schedule, collection schedule, user guides by topic, or actually in your appendices. We're going to use what's in the collection schedule guide, so I'm going to expand that. And over here on the right, you'll find all of the end of year guides that you're going to need. So we'll start with the end of year attendance totals user guide. So this collection actually begins on May 9th, and it ends on 6/30/2022. That's when you have to have your data in and sent to the state. You may end your school earlier, and it's okay to do this after your last day. You don't have to wait till June 30th, but the June 30th is just the deadline. So what is it we collect in this? For the end of year attendance totals, we collect the ADA, or average daily attendance, the ADA number of days present, and the ESSA number of days absent. All those fields should be calculated by actually that due date or the last day of your school. For those of you who use Infinite Campus as your SIS, you can use the end of year attendance tool calculator to actually do that for you. Montana Addition districts, not value added. If you actually have Montana Addition Infinite Campus value added, you can also use the EOY attendance total tool. The Montana Addition users who aren't value added will need to use an upload template to get your data into Infinite Campus, and I'm going to go over how to do that. All right, so there's always a table of contents with each of our guides. There's an FAQ. You can click on any of these and it jumps you right to these in the user guide if you're looking for something specific. The FAQs are generally, they're based off of questions that we've received and thought that maybe they needed a little more clarification. As I said before, this kind of clarifies what the ADA present and enrolled are and what the ESSA days absent mean as well, and how this data can be uploaded and that it can be calculated within Infinite Campus, which is what I'll show you how to do. We also talk a little bit about how to get A and B students for extracurricular activities, which I mentioned a little bit ago. I will be going over the extracurricular later in the webinar, But it's also included in this guide, and it's included in the program participation guide as well. So that if you do have extracurricular students attending your district, you can get A and B for that if you choose to do so. It all depends on how you enter them into Infinite Campus, and it all depends on that you do get it in before the end of the year. Otherwise, you do not get that A and B. Okay, so who are these kiddos that you have to put attendance in for? It's any student with an enrollment in the current school year whose service type is P primary or S partial. This is regardless of any of the length of enrollment in your district. So any of those students with a P or S service type have to have the ADA days present enrolled and the ESSA days absent entered. Students with a service type of N special ed and students who are only enrolled for extracurricular activities are not required to have this data entered. The multiple enrollments is also a really important thing to remember. If you have students who have enrolled multiple times in your building or your district in the same school year, you'll have to remember that each of those enrollments actually needs the actual 3 ADA days enrolled and present and the ESSA days absent. So what do I mean by that? So if I go over here, oh, it just kicked me out. Hold on just a second. If I go over here, I'm going to show you a student's enrollment. And if you guys have any questions for me as I go along here, just feel free to type them in the chat and I'll address them as I can. Okay, so what do I mean by this? So if I go to a student, then let's use, actually, oops. Oh, hold on, I'm sorry here. Sorry, I apologize. I think I thought it would give me a little more time here. Okay. Let's go to. No, that's not going to do it. Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so if I go to this kiddo here, under his enrollment tab, you're going to find, or you will see, 2 enrollments for the same school year. So he came in the 10th grade at the beginning of school, left in February, came back the end of February, and has left. School is now withdrawn for the rest of the year. If you have students who have multiple enrollments just like this, each one of these within the same school year, each one of these has to have the ADA information and the ESSA information on them. So you'll have to be sure to double check your double and multiple enrollments. One way to do that is to run an enrollment summary report or an enrollment detail report, and it will show students for you that actually do have to multiple enrollments in one school year. Okay, so that's an example of the multiple enrollments. And this kind of gives you a real outline of what that means, and also a little bit of a screenshot of what that could look like. This guide also goes into entering the ADA present and enrolled and the ESSA days absent and what exactly the definition for those are. So if you have somebody asking you or you're curious, this right here will tell you exactly what those mean, those fields mean. Okay, so let's move on to the real meat of this, which is actually the how do I get that data into Infinite Campus or from my SIS into Infinite Campus. So this tool is available to district edition, or like I said, Montana value added edition districts. So you can, you also have to have maintained schedules and attendance in most of your Infinite Campus, and most of you do. So you can actually use this tool. This tool processes and populates the ADA fields located on the Students Enrollment tab. It also populates the ESSA days absent on the enrollments with the value from the chronic absenteeism information federal box on the students' attendance tabs. So let's go in here and we're going to take a look at where that tool lives. So if we go to attendance and we scroll all the way down, to Montana State Reporting, you'll find it under Montana EOY attendance totals. So if we click on that, what you're going to be doing in here is telling it, and the first thing you're going to want to do is just validate and test. There's two options here. There's validate and test, and there's update enrollments. The first thing you want to do is validate and test. This is going to tell you if you have any errors in your data that need and should be corrected before you actually update the enrollments with that information. So if I were to run this for this calendar at this school, I'd need to select all three of these boxes. So I'm going to have it calculate my days present, my days enrolled, and my ESSA days absent. I'm going to ask it to just validate and test. And I'm going to tell it what calendar in the active year to do this for. And right now it's for the extra C only high school. This is a scrambled database. So some of this some of the names might be kind of goofy, but it's just because it's a test. We call it a learning database. So I'm going to click on that. And as I scroll down, you'll see that I've already run some. But as you do this, as you work through this, you'll click on your calendar and do submit to batch. And what this does, what that told me is that I wasn't done with school yet. So in my learning, my testing and learning database here, I'm not able to actually run the tool itself. But if you were to do that and submit to batch, it would put it down here in your queue. Once that's complete, you'll see it says get the report. So if you click on get the report, what it's going to do is it's going to open up an Excel file for you and tell you exactly what is wrong with the data, if anything. This is an example of what that spreadsheet is going to look like. What you're concerned about is the warnings. The warnings aren't going to keep you from updating enrollments, but you should pay attention to them as to what they say and why. This one's telling us that, let me expand this a little bit. This particular calendar, it says less than 10 attendance days have elapsed since the start of the selected calendar. Very little, you will not get that error. You shouldn't in your own database. This is just a test database. What you're mostly concerned about is what's in your errors here. So you're going to want to go through, if you do have any errors, and actually look to see what it's telling you and go back and correct what it's telling you. After you've done that, out back in your database, you've gone out and you've corrected what those errors are, or they've told you, you can come back in here and do another validate and test. You can do this as many times, and you should do this as many times as it takes before you get a clean error report. Once you've done that and you decide, I've got this as clean as it can be, I have no errors, and maybe only a couple warnings. Again, the warnings will not keep you from updating enrollments. It's just telling you there might be something incorrect out in your database. Once you have your good and final test, then you can go back to this tool, select these same 3 boxes, and this time you're going to do update enrollments. So once you do that and you submit to batch, it's going to put the same information in the queue down here. It'll pop it down in there. It'll run for a little bit. And then once it's complete, you're going to get a report. That report probably won't tell you anything that is real interesting to you or that you really need to know, other than it's just complete. So then what you'll want to do after you've updated your enrollments and are good to go with it, it tells you it's complete, you can come back up here to a student, and I would recommend you do that. And in your students enrollments tab, if you click on their latest enrollment, for example, and scroll down, that tool should have populated your end of year attendance totals here with your present, your enrolled, and your ESSA days absent. Now, can you click on all the schools, not just one at a time? I think you can. You can, Kelly. If you're not a very big school, you can, and it'll save you some time as opposed to doing it one at a time. So if you go back and these are accurately populated, then you know that the tool worked and that part is complete. The only thing I want to remind you of is that, again, you're going to have to pay a close attention to the students who have multiple enrollments and ensure that both of those enrollment records have those fields filled out for the same school year. I don't believe, and here's the caveat to this, I don't believe that the tool will grab both enrollment records. I think you're going to have to verify and audit that if you do have multiple enrollments, those are complete and done. So then that also leads me to the next comment I want to make. If you're a very small school and you do have district edition of Infinite Campus, or you don't, and you're still a very small school, those can be hand entered. You do not have to run that tool. If you keep records elsewhere, you don't have to run it, and you can just transfer them into the enrollment record by hand. That is fine too. The tool is just out there to help you in doing this step. It'll actually configure it for you. Are there any questions about that so far? Okay, so moving on. If you are a Montana Addition district and you don't have the luxury, you have a large school, a large student body, and you don't have the luxury of using the end of year attendance tool because it's not available to you, there is an upload template. So back out on our AIM page, if I go back one page or two, back out to my tabs here, there's an upload template tab. If I click on that, you can see down here that there is an end of year attendance tools template. This is a template that Montana Addition users can use to pull from their SIS into Infinite Campus for the end of year attendance totals. I have an example of one over here. I'll show you what it looks like. Comes out in an Excel sheet. Anything in red is required. Anything in black is not. So just as an example, I entered some data here. You're going to have to enter the record type, which is AA, and the district number, which is 4 digits. And if you ever have a question, if you're using this template and you ever have a question about what this is, it's asking you for, hover over that little red flag in the box there, and it tells you exactly what is required and how to fill in that field. So as you can see, I kind of filled this template out with what it was asking me to do. When you get over here to the ADA data and the ESSA data, the only thing to remember, and again, it tells you right here in the little box, these are decimal points. So you have to enter this data as a decimal. ESSA days is not. So that can look just like that as a single digit. And then of course the school year. I don't know if I have any Montana Addition districts, but for the sake of, this is being recorded, so I want to be sure to include this in case somebody watches this that is Montana Addition. So I apologize if this is kind of boring to some of you, but this upload process can get kind of tricky. Once you complete this spreadsheet, you're going to want to delete some fields. And I will, Jill, you bet. And I'll tell you exactly where to find it. I will send you all a link to the recorded version. And then you're going to want to delete the first 3 rows. And it tells you all this information up here. The tricky part is it doesn't really tell you how to do the header very well. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually physically walk through this with you so that you can understand a little bit how this works. We're going to delete the first top 3 rows. And this is before I actually save it as a .text delimited file right here. And now I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to close this out. And the tricky part becomes when we go back out to get this. Let me see. Hold on. Nope, that's not it. See, I lost it. Hold on just a second. Okay, here it is. I just put it on my desktop as a tab delimited file, .txt, and this is how it should look when you go back in to add the header. The really crazy part to these upload templates is adding the header. So I click on this record type right here, and I'm going to enter once. Then I'm going to go back up, and my header is HD, and I'm going to tab over, and my date. So the date that I'm actually putting this, I'm going to upload this template, and I'm going to tab again. And it's going to ask you to put in the time, and this is actually military time. So I'm going to go 14:53 p.m. and I'm going to tab again, and then I have to put in MT 9.1. The good thing about this header is that it actually is the same for each upload template. So if you're a Montana Addition district that does these upload templates, this header is the same for all your upload templates. So once you get this down once, then you're good to go. Now I'm going to save it again. And once I have that saved back out to where I have it, then I'm going to go back to my Infinite Campus. And again, if you're familiar with this process, you're going to find the upload information under Montana State Reporting, Montana Data Upload. So that file that we created is now something we can pull in to add your attendance totals for all your students. So the import data tab radio button is already checked. Your import type is going to be your end of year attendance totals. This is the same process to validate and test as it was in the end of year attendance calculation tab or tool, I'm sorry. I would always recommend you do a validate and test before you actually upload files, just so you can see what's it's going to put in there for you and that it's accurate in how you want it to be. So you're going to choose validate and test first, and then you'll choose your file. And that file is somewhere out there. I'm not going to try to go look for it. You're going to choose the file that you saved, and you're going to upload it. As soon as you choose that file and click upload, it puts it right in here. And then you're going to submit to batch. The submit to batch button does the same thing as the attendance tool. It'll pop it down here in the queue, and it'll go out there and it'll churn for a little bit. The refresh button is so you can keep refreshing it to see when it's done. It will always tell you it's complete with the report. So once you have that completed, you've checked it, you like it, you can go right back up here, and instead of validate and test, you would just choose upload file. The upload file is what's going to change your data. The upload file will then grab it, put it into the student's ADA present and enrolled in the ESSA days absent boxes for you. So it's a little more manual process, but again, if you're using another SIS, like PowerSchool or something else like that, they generally have a way to pull that out into the format that Infinite Campus needs. So for you to put it into this upload template file and get it into Infinite Campus. Okay, so again, and I can't stress enough, if you have a very small student body or not, just not enough to do this process, or even maybe use the attendance calculation tool, there's always the manual entry method, and you can feel free to do that at any time. Are there any questions about either one of those processes so far? Nope. Okay. All right. So now that you actually, let's go back to our guide. You've actually run the attendance totals, you've uploaded the attendance totals. And all this is doing in the guide is actually walking through what I did for you, walked through with you just now. Goes through the attendance totals, manual entry. Like I said, you feel free to do that. And the other part, like I said, and I'm going to reference this again towards the end of the webinar, is the extracurricular activities. There is some calculation to these as well, and you can see the little blurb at the top. That's to ensure that extracurricular activities are included in the ensuing year's A&B count. You enter the number of completed extracurricular activities in the fields below the attendance count fields. So, do any of you have extracurricular students now? Do anybody on with me? Yes, okay. So, okay, great. No, not enrolled in. Okay, did Glasgow and Jill, did you do separate calendars for your extracurricular students? Okay, so the recommendation was that, and I think you'll kind of understand a little bit why. It's just to kind of keep them separate from the other things that it might require. So, okay, well, we'll go over the extracurricular book kind of later in the webinar, the user guide, and then we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. For the attendance totals, though, this is where the extracurricular kind of comes into play. And I feel like we, as far as the data entry, we kind of need to mention this now, but as far as the other meat and potatoes of extracurricular, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But if I go back to my Infinite Campus and I go back to one of my kiddos here, oops, okay, it's just slow, sorry. And I click on an enrollment tab. As you guys know, all that kind of lives down here, like I showed you where the attendance counts live. The extracurricular, so the extracurricular box is right here for a student who may be enrolled in extracurricular activities only. That box then coincides down here with what's the number of weeks, 6+ weeks of activities that the student completed or did, or number of 18+ week activities. So this becomes important in the same end of year process as the attendance totals for your extracurricular kiddos. This is where that information gets filled out. So once you're all finished with doing that portion of your EOY totals, how do I know that my data is good before I hit resync? So there are a plethora of actual ad hocs out there that we have created for you guys to use. And I'm going to try to get into the Scrambled State Edition here so I can show you. You didn't like doing that before. Okay, yep, it did it. All right, so if I go to the current year here, you can use ad hocs to verify your data. So under the state published folder, there are a ton of ad hocs. Well, I don't know if I'd say a ton, that's really kind of not right, but anything that starts with EOY is end of year related. EOY AT attendance, EOY enrollment, those will all help you verify and make sure your data is accurate before you hit resync to the state. I would use all of these. I would make sure that all your students have the attendance days enrolled and present, that box filled out, your absent days filled out. This actually tells you the ESSA days absent. Let me click on this one. It lists of students who have a value in that field. And so this will actually help you in determining if that field is even left blank, which it probably, then that would be a reason to go back out and check that student. But I would definitely recommend running most of these EOY ATs because that will narrow down any issues you have with your end of year attendance. Okay. Any questions on the ad hocs? Everybody familiar with running ad hocs, I'm sure. And I wish I could go further into running some ad hocs, but again, these scrambled databases just do not work real well with trying to show you actual data. Okay, so easy, right? Easy end of year attendance. And as always, you know that you can call the helpline or put in a help desk ticket if you need help with any of this process. That is what I am there for, and that's what our AIM department is there for. We're happy to help you. Okay, so the next part of end of year is program participation. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this simply because by this time, you should already have all of your program participation in for each student that is in some kind of or being served in some kind of a program. What we're really asking you to do with this end of year program participation collection is ensuring that all of your students who are supposed to be in program, whether it's title, whether it's military, which is considered a program. Let's see, what is others here? Foreign exchange, immigrant, gifted and talented. We're just asking that you verify and that you are sure you have all of your students enrolled before you hit resync again to the state. All of these programs are important in the fact that you need to ensure that your students who are being served are in the student information system. There's several ways to do this again. If you are a district edition, most of this, and I'll go through where to see this in Infinite Campus, is found in the enrollment tab. There are a few that are found outside of the enrollment tab for example, free and reduced, section 504, and the EL tab are found outside of the enrollment tab. So there are a couple places to ensure that you've got all this data that you need. But going down this checklist, we want you to verify a couple things, and the checklist is very helpful as you kind of work through this, just so that you don't miss anything, and you're sure that your data is accurate. You want to verify that all your students have no overlaps in enrollment. So you can actually, there's a report in Infinite Campus you can run, that's an enrollment summary overlap report, and there's a state enrollment overlap report, and I'll show those to you, and I'll show you the difference of why there's two. You're going to want to verify your demographic data. We actually created a brand new ad hoc, and it starts with TWDM, and it's right out here. It'll look like this: TWDM student demographic check 2021-22. If you haven't already ran that, you should. It's a check on actually race and ethnicity. We want to ensure that all of your students have the appropriate or have race and ethnicity at all in their enrollment record. So this is a good one to run. Then you're going to verify your program data, and we'll walk through where some of this is located. And we're also asking at this point in time in the school year, because you're at the end and you're actually verifying program participation data, that you verify that your behavior data is up to date and all entered as it should be. We're going to talk about certifying behavior next week, and so that'll become a big part of that, ensuring that all that data is there in Infinite Campus. So then, of course, you know, we have ad hocs for verifying all of the student information, or I'm sorry, program participation, and they all start with EOY as well, and so we'll go in and we'll look at that too. And then when you're finished and you've verified all of your data, you'll hit resync. So where does a lot of this live? And again, like I said, most of this is done already. You're just verifying that you didn't miss anybody that should be in program somewhere and need to add them. So all of the data that was listed in the guide, pretty much at the top in the checklist, is found in the enrollment tab. So this is just a student. I clicked on Joseph's top enrollment tab, and as I scroll down, you'll find Title I right here, which is important. So all of that information has to be entered. You'll find immigrant here, 21st century, gifted and talented, and homeless. In the program participation guide, each of these programs actually has definitions and more information on the why and how behind all of these, and where exactly with screenshots you can find all this information. So if you ever have a question on what exactly does some of that mean, it is lined out and defined in this guide here. Foreign exchange, gifted and talented. But most of this information is, again, found in the enrollment tab. All righty. Now that the information found outside of the enrollment tab. So if I go back here and I go into index, and I scroll back up to the student information here. Under program participation, you'll find the programs that are listed outside: English learner, foster care, migrant, section 504. And FRAM is another one, but FRAM actually has a module all of its own, clear down here in your list. And I always go right by this thing. Let's see, let me close up some of these tabs. There it is right there, FRAM, free and reduced, lives outside, down the list just a bit. Now, some of these in the program participation guide, again, just like they're outlined here. I'm sorry if I'm scrolling too fast. I know I don't want to make anybody seasick. There are separate guides. For example, the English Learner's Guide actually has a tool guide with it on a standalone on its own. So if you're wondering about some of the information that you have a question on about English learners, where exactly how the tool works on its own, this guide walks you right through that. Special education is pretty straightforward. It does not have a guide on its own, but if if you have a question on special education, there is some contact information that I'll show you how to get to. FRAM has a guide all on its own as well. So any of this information, FRAM, EL, if you go to their guide, it really walks you from point A to point B in a very definitive manner. They're very comprehensive. 504 is a standalone out on its own. That did change recently, I believe from last year. There was some confusion. All 504 students are now located outside in the 504 tool, if they are a 504. It's pretty straightforward. If I go back up to program participation and go to the 504 tool, you can see here, oh, sorry, it's not gonna let me do that because I have two open. It's just actually, it really asks you for a start date and a possible end date, and that's it. And what that tool is specifically really used for is for test accommodations. So if you have 504 kiddos, I would really recommend you get them in there just in case there's some accommodations they need for testing. So with that being said, with the program participation information, you can always enter this data. There really is no other way to enter this data except manually. You know, there's check boxes really that you need to go into that enrollment tab and add the data manually. Montana Addition districts, there is, let's go back to the upload template. There is a program participation template, but again, normally we don't see that happen this time of year. It's usually in the fall when that's used heavily. By now you've really got your kiddos in and everything's done. You're just verifying at this point. But I thought I'd mention that template. Okay, and then just like end of year attendance totals verification, there's ad hocs for this program information as well. And again, you can find that all under EOI. There is extracurricular activities ad hocs as well to verify. When you're verifying enrollment to ensure that no enrollments overlap in your district, those are actually found under student reports. So if I go to reports, student information and reports, you can see that right here, there's enrollment status, enrollment summary detail. But the one that I would recommend that is super great for finding enrollment overlaps is the actual state, and it's not on here. There's a state enrollment overlap that tells you exactly if the kiddo that's in your district is actually sharing an enrollment with a district in the state, another district. So you can see right there that you might have a problem, and you can contact us to get that fixed. But that state overlap is excellent. I mean, it will tell you if the student you're looking at is enrolled in another district in the state. Any questions about that? Making sure that your students are in program and verifying. Any questions that I can try to answer for you at this time? And of course, after you do anything in here, you change anything in the program data or enrollment data, you're going to want to resync to ensure that gets sent to the state. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we'll just keep moving on here. What I want to talk about next is mode of instruction. So most of you by now, again, it's just like the program participation. you already have your mode of instruction set on your school mode of instruction record and on your student's mode of instruction. There is some confusion about what the difference is in the two, and I'll kind of give you an idea of what that is. And nobody on this webinar right now might have that issue, but just in case, let's take a look. So we've sent a couple emails to districts and have mentioned that, hey, you don't have your school mode of instruction set. And we get some feedback with, well, I did do my students' mode of instruction. Well, there's actually two separate things here. And if we were to look at the mode of instruction manual, it actually spells out the difference between the student and the school mode of instruction. So I'm not going to change, oops, yeah. I'm not going to scroll through that to make, again, that's not going to help you, but, well, it will help you. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant, but by showing you, I think it'll make it more clear. The actual school mode of instruction is one record, and it lives out in the index under system administration, under resources in school. Many of you have seen this, and most likely all of you may have already done this. Your schools are going to come up here listed, and if I expand one of the schools, for instance, you're going to see the original record. That's not what we want to see for school mode of instruction. For school mode of instruction, we want to see that you've clicked on this and you've added a new school history with the effective date. The effective date is typically your first day of school or the first day that you may have changed a mode of instruction. Say you went from remote to in person or vice versa. So for this, I'm going to say I started my mode of instruction the first day of school, and you're going to choose how you're delivering instruction. Is it remote or online? Nope, it's not offered. Is it hybrid? Nope, that is not offered as well. Is it full-time? Yes, that's offered to everybody. So then I'm going to save the school history. If I expand this again, you can see there's a new record there. That is what we want to see, and that is what we mean when we say, hey, you do not have a school mode of instruction on any of your schools. We're looking for this, just one record saying, how right now are you delivering instruction to your students? So if you ever get a phone call or an email from us that says, hey, your school mode of instruction is missing, this is where it is, and this is what we're talking about. That's one record. Yeah, that's it. The only time this will change is if, again, you may have changed how you deliver instruction. Maybe you went from remote to hybrid or remote to in person. Then you'll need to go in and add a new school history. All right, so you've done all that, and then so let's go back and take a look at a student. Then we also say you need to make sure the student's mode of instruction is filled out as well. So if I'm in a student and I go under program participation and I go to state programs, oh, gosh darn, it's not going to let me. There's a, let me see if this will do it. Here it is. There's a CTE participant tab under this state programs and a Montana instruction mode tab under this state program. So if I click on this, this is where we expect to see the student's mode of instruction. So there is a new tab here for you to look at or see when you're in your own database, and you're just going to add a new record. It'll have the start date, the end date, and how the student is getting instruction. And it's the same three options as out in the school in the school record for mode of instruction. And then you click save, and that's loaded. So this is also an upload for everybody, including districts. This is an upload situation. There is no way to get this. There's no tool to use to put mode of instruction in for each student at this time. So this is really a manual process, no matter how you look at it. So as I said before, this is actually should be done by now. It should have been done by fall. We collect it 3 times: the fall count, spring count, and then end of year. The important thing that we want to cover in this end of year webinar is that now your mode of instructions need an end date. There is no way to get that end date in there aside from an upload or a manual entry. So if you are a district that did not enter end dates in your mode of instruction for your students, then what you're going to want to do, and here's my recommendation, is you're going to want to go get the mode of instruction template and get that all loaded and up on your screen. And then what you're going to want to do is go to an ad hoc, your ad hocs here. And we have created an easy way, or we have tried to get this data back out. In your ad hocs, you should see and it's under all student mode of instruction template. So what this will do is it will download all of the information for you from your students in your database now and give it to you in a way where you can then take that information and match it to the template for the mode of instruction, this one here. It gives you that information to populate into these fields and then add an end date and upload this information again. This process is actually covered on page 10 of the mode of instruction. It's actually right here. Indating current records, adding additional records in mass. The only thing that we need to add to this guide, and what I've mentioned before just now, is that you do have a way of pulling this out where you don't have to add that student data in by hand on that template. You just use this student mode of instruction template here, and it downloads the information that's already in your system for all of your students. And it allows you to end that end date and then upload it again using the Montana State Reporting data upload mode of instruction. And this is the state, so it's not going to have that. It will in your database. So the most important part to remember with the MOI now is that you need to add an end date. You need to end those records for the end of year collection. So will it change the end date if someone is transferred out before the end of the year? It will overwrite it. It will not. Okay, so what will happen, Kelly, is part of that upload template, and the reason it spells it out in here is that you're telling it you're going to add and edit a record. You're not going to actually overwrite something that's already there. And if you pull that template out of Infinite Campus using that actual ad hoc, it'll show end dates that are already in there, and you won't do anything with it. You'll just leave them in there. So when you upload that, it already knows there's an end date and won't change it. Does that make sense? That's why I really want you guys to go in there and use that if you have to add end dates, because it already has the end dates for those students who may have left your school, or if you've changed mode of instruction during the middle of the year or something, it'll have them already in there. and it won't do anything with them. If you're nervous about it, you can actually just take those out of the template and it won't touch them at all. But you're actually just adding a record to the other records. All right, so let's talk about extracurricular activities. So I know that some of you had a question about this before, and I think that this has been, this is new this year, and I think it's been a little bit confusing in how the information has been rolled out. The recommendation all along has been that any of your extracurricular students should have a separate calendar. And that's simply for the matter of they are not actually participating in anything else outside of coming to school to participate in something sports-wise or class-wise that doesn't have anything to do with actual attendance or grades, anything like that. So the actual recommendation is to create a new calendar for your extracurricular kids, enroll them in that calendar, and then just mark them as using extracurricular activities with those 2 boxes at the bottom for how many weeks they're participating. This guide will walk you through what qualifies, what doesn't, what students qualify for inclusion into A and B for extracurricular, who verifies eligibility, what happens if a student doesn't complete it. The most important thing that we wanted to add to this and why we brought this up at end of year is if you don't get this done and you're expecting A and B for your students who are participating in extracurricular activities, you will not get your A and B. It has to be done before you actually, while you're doing your end of year procedures. Now, the recommendation is for a calendar, a separate calendar. If you haven't done that up to this point in time, that doesn't mean you're not going to get A and B. It's just for record keeping purposes for the district and finance. It makes it easier. It makes it a whole lot easier if they are separated out into a different calendar for tracking them. And that actually is spelled out in this page right here. And that's why I went to this page, why we recommend that and how to do that. Any questions on that extracurricular at all? Did that help or? And as you could see out in the ad hoc list, there are reports for you to verify your students who are in extracurricular activities. So I would recommend that if you are a building or a district that has some of those students, I would go in and run that and see who they are. But again, if you don't have a calendar created for this school year by now already, I don't know if I would go back and create one, but I would for next year. I would definitely for next year create an extracurricular calendar. I'm sorry. Do you have to go back? So question about MOI. Do we need to go back to 1920 due to COVID and enter modes of instruction for all of that time? No, you do not. This is only for this school year, Camille, for 21-22, I apologize. And if you did it, do not go backwards. You don't have to do that. We're just talking about this current school year for the collection. You're welcome. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you're working in program participation and you have a question about a specific program, and more so not exactly about how to enter it into AIM or Infinite Campus, but maybe specifically an actual program question, like how does this student qualify? There's in the AIM webpage, there is a full version of the AIM staff directory. If you click on that, and you actually, this little page will pop up, and down here at the bottom are all the program people, contact number and email. So if you have specific program questions, that is there for you to use, and definitely contact them. They'll be able to help you. Excuse me. If you have a question about how to get it into AIM or anything like that, please call us and we will help you get whatever you need to get done. We are here for you. Is there any more questions or anything I can clarify for anybody? If not, then that really concludes the end of this end of year attendance totals and many other MOI, program participation, and extracurricular. Please feel free to put in a case. Please feel free to call the AIM helpline. We're here to make it less confusing and easier for you guys, and we can help you with any uploading you need to do, or anything. So just give us a call if you need help. You are welcome. And I will put this recording out on the website as soon as I can. You should see it by middle of next week. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I got a tickle. And I will email the links out to all of you who joined me. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.